Hello everyone. Today's lessons is on the function of attitudes. By the end of this video, you should be able to describe the four functions that attitudes serve, identify these four functions of attitudes, and apply this knowledge to attitudes of your own. Why do people develop attitudes? Functional theories suggest that people have attitudes for a range of reasons, and that different people may have exactly the same attitude, but may serve a different function for each of these different people. It is also important to understand that an attitude can serve more than one function for a person. According to Katz 1960, there are four key functions of attitudes. These are the adaptive function, the ego-defensive function, value-expressive function, and the knowledge function. Let's have a look at each one in more detail. The adaptive function helps people to strive to maximize their rewards and minimize penalties from the world around them. We develop positive attitudes towards things that will reward us in some way, and develop negative attitudes towards things that don't reward us, that punish us or penalize us. For example, in an election, a person will develop a positive attitude towards the candidate who offers them the policies that will provide the most rewards. However, the same candidate may present policies that penalise other individuals with different family, cultural, social and economic needs. That person may develop a negative attitude to the candidate in the election. This illustrates that while the adaptive function is at work in both cases, it can result in two very different attitudes depending upon the needs of the individual. The adaptive function also works in social situations. If a person holds and/or expresses socially acceptable attitudes, other people will reward them with approval and social acceptance. For example, when people flatter their bosses or instructors, and believe it, or keep it silent if they think an attitude is unpopular. Expression can be non-verbal, so think about when politicians kiss babies. Attitudes then are to do with being part of a social group, and the adaptive functions help us fit in with a social group. People seek out others who share their attitudes and develop similar attitudes to those they like. The ego-defensive function helps people avoid admitting negative things about themselves or the harsh realities of the outside world. For this function, forming attitudes is a defense mechanism to protect our self-image in our own eyes. For example, we might develop a negative image of a minority group to convince ourselves that we are better than them. Reformed smokers will often be the strongest voices telling others about the dangers of smoking. In doing so, they are defending their own ego, protecting themselves from a decision that they made to smoke, which they now disagree with. We might also use this function to protect our self-esteem or justify actions that make us feel guilty. For example, one way children might defend themselves against the feelings of humiliation they've experienced in PE lessons is to adopt a strongly negative attitude towards all sports. People whose pride have suffered following a defeat in sport might similarly adopt a defensive attitude. I'm not bothered, I'm sick of tennis anyway. Attitudes formed with an ego-defensive function are often acknowledged as being the most difficult to change because they are often expressing some form of hostility and are covering up something that people find difficult to face or don't want to admit to. The value-expressive function allows us to gain satisfaction from expressing our attitudes and values, which are central to our concept of ourselves. This function allows us to gain positive feelings about ourselves through expressing attitudes about our beliefs and self-image. The reward is establishing our self-identity. The attitudes we express firstly help to communicate who we are, and secondly, make us feel good because we have asserted our identity. Self-expression of attitudes can be non-verbal, so think car brands and bumper stickers, or t-shirt slogans and brand logos. Therefore, our attitudes are part of our identity, and help us to be aware through the expression of our feelings, beliefs and values. For teenagers, this is often about making it clear to the world and parents who I am, what I believe in, and that I'm independent enough to have my own values and beliefs. Other common examples are people wearing their favourite sports team colours, driving a specific brand of car, and wearing brand name clothing. Each of these are examples of expressing values, beliefs and ideas. Lastly, the knowledge function operates because people require knowledge to give structure and order to the world in which they live. This doesn't mean that people need to have knowledge about everything in life. However, people do want to know about things that directly affect them or could potentially affect them. It helps us to know how to act when we face people and situations. We use our previous attitudes and knowledge to help decide how to react to new situations. This is how stereotypes can shape an attitude. Attitudes provide meaning, knowledge, for life. The knowledge function refers to our need for a world which is consistent and relatively stable. This allows us to predict what is likely to happen, and so gives us a sense of control. Attitudes can help us organise and structure our experience. Knowing a person's attitude helps us predict their behaviour. For example, knowing that a person is religious, we can predict that they will go to church. Now let's apply what we've learned in this lesson to a scenario. Imagine you are patriotic about being Australian. This might cause you to have an ethnocentric attitude towards everything not Australian. Imagine further that you are with a group of like-minded friends. You say, "Of course there's no other country as good as Australia to live in. Other places are all right in their own way, but they can't compare, not with your mother country." There are nods of approval all around. You are fitting in, the adaptive function. The people in the group are wearing Australian football shirts. This is the value-expressive function. Then imagine you go on to say, "The trouble with foreigners is that they don't speak English. I went to France last year and they were ignorant. Even if they could speak our language, they wouldn't do so. I call that unfriendly." Others agree with you and tell you of their similar experiences. You are making sense of things. This is the knowledge function. Then someone who has never travelled takes things a stage further. "I don't mind foreigners coming here on holiday, but they shouldn't be allowed to live here, taking our jobs and living off social security. Australia for the Australians is what I say. Why is it getting so hard that you can't get a job in your own country?" Now the others in the room join in, scapegoating foreigners and demonstrating the ego defensive function of attitudes. Think about your attitude towards an issue such as animal testing. Can you examine your attitude under each of these 4 functions? Thanks for watching. See you next time.